That's not going to work for me.
You're live.
You are.
Pause, like and subscribe. Oh, I really want you to keep it up there.
I'm going to keep talking about the elements and principles. And so you have your page, which you should have divided up into 7 slides, 7 triangles. One side says elements. And we're going to add a new one on today, talking about space. So add these words to the triangle. If you don't know what they are, ask me, figure it out. You can Google all these terms. So space is either real or simulated. If it's simulated space, it looks like you're walking down a road. It looks like you're you could actually put your hand into the paper, but it's just a 2-dimensional surface. Wonderful. If it's real space, then you're talking about a sculpture, right? This mug has real space, right? But simulated space is an illusion. One of the ways we create simulated space is through rules of perspective. And the rules of perspective are really simply, if it's larger, if it's lower, and if it's in front of, then it's closer. So if it's something that's looking at the screen right now, if it's in front, then it's closer. That's a rule of perspective. If it's lower on the page, we interpret that as closer. And obviously, if it's larger, then it's closer. So this all makes the illusion of space. Sometimes an artist will very specifically mess around with the rules of perspective and they'll pick one of those things and they'll create an illusion, an optical illusion that way. M.C. Escher is famous for that. Another way of creating simulated space is to use linear perspective. So the reason that you can interpret these 2 rectangles and try and think, oh, it's a box or it's a building or whatever, is because we've got these lines going into the distance. So some of you have drawn a street where there's buildings that get smaller and smaller. Linear perspective is using lines to show space. So I'll add in the word linear perspective. So this shouldn't be anything new. Linear perspective can be 1-point perspective or 2-point perspective. And then there's also, instead of using line, you can also use color to show perspective. And I think we put that up here in color. Atmospheric perspective is just using color. So a green tree that's a mile away won't be green anymore. It might be more bluish or grayish or something like that. So wherever you have atmospheric perspective also creates space. So those are a few words with space that I want you to know and use. And when we talk about your art, you're more and more familiar with those things. The next one we're going to do is movement, and you got to flip the page over. Right? So hopefully you still see the lines, but if you don't, draw them again. There are 7 principles of art where you would take color and space and value, and you would do different things with it. Here's one of the rules. It's called movement. I'm going to list off 2 or 3 really basic terms, basic ideas. When you have movement in a piece, we're not talking about the art itself moving. If you're looking at this beautiful painting right here, all right, the waves aren't moving. The trees aren't moving. I'm not talking about physical movement. I'm talking about where our eyes follow along. So if we start at any point on the outside of this stool, we start over here, there is a trajectory towards the focal point. Our eyes follow these lines, follow these edges, follow all of them. And those movements of our eyeballs is what we're talking about. You can have big word. Rectilinear movement is when you have a shape that's got straight edges. Kind of like geometric. All right. And the opposite? Curvilinear movement is going to happen when there's lots of loose, smooth, wavy, curvilinear movement. Those are very expressive when you're doing abstract art. If you want to show depression or boredom or some low energy emotion, you're going to use maybe curvilinear. But if you want to show rage and confusion and something excitable, you might use more rectilinear. A few others. When it comes to movement, you need to think about pathways. The most powerful way to create a focal point is not through value contrast. It's actually having all these things come together, whether it's a horizon line. There we go. Perfect. Whether it's a horizon line or tree trunks, these value passages actually create movement that draw your eye towards the focal point. They do this all the time in advertising. You wonder why you keep on looking at this one thing on the poster. It's because all these shapes have been designed, these pathways, to move you back to that. On a menu in a store, they've done this before. They've done a test where this, like Bar Reno or Bar Rescue, these real life shows, they show the menu of this bar that's failing. Hey? Okay, exactly. Yeah, the flipping stories. They show a restaurant that's totally failing, and they show the menu. And it's really distracting, and it's whatever. And they ask, what is your number one selling product that you make the most money on? They say, oh, people come here for the wings. Okay, where's the wings? It's this tiny little line down here. They charge a lot for the steak, and they make a lot of money on the steak. So why don't you put the steak front and center and have all the red lines and yellow lines and pictures aimed towards the steak? People come into the new restaurant, and they're like, I came here for the wings, but I really want the steak. And they actually do tests on people's eyes where the pathways lead their eyes. And so they redo the menu to make it more profitable. You are subject to that kind of design. If you look at a movie, you'll see that they frame the shot to get the focal point with movement, the design and principle of movement to be very effective. So those are two more. If you're in grade 9, that's usually all we teach. Grade 10, we're going to get a few more on this page. Any last thoughts? What do I say?
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Like, comment, or subscribe.
And subscribe.
Buy the t-shirt.
Thumbs up button.
Comment on my